Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and welcome to the final episode of the GTA 5 Race Creator series, and we're going to go back to something that I would normally do at the very start of the series many years ago and actually showcase some of my tracks. And I'm going to be showcasing the final versions of my 5 main racing circuits here today and show you how to get them for yourself as well. So we'll talk about that straight away. If you don't know how to race any of these tracks for yourself, you can get the links for all of these down below in the description and the pinned comment, but these pages that they'll link you to will allow you to race the regular versions, the shorter versions, the random versions if you want to do random races with them as well. For example, if I go to Olympic GP, this is the newest recreation that we've got. You can see for the main circuit here, we've got links for PS5, PC and Xbox. You click one of those and it takes you to the job. You click bookmark job, go to your bookmark jobs section in game and you can load it up. But also if you want the shorter versions, so we got the East Short, the West Short, the East Long and the West Long, they're all shorter variants of the main circuit. You can get the links for every platform for those as well. And the random versions are on that webpage too, so you can do the full version, the full Olympic GP with 3 car changes per lap, the popular West Short version, which is just all those hairpins, which is 1 car change per lap that you've seen on random autos in the past. And you just click the link for your platform and you can add it to your game. And then the older versions are there at the bottom as well. And this will be the same format for all of the tracks that I showcased today, whether it's Los Santos GP, you can see we've got the variations, then the random versions, whether it's the North Loop. They're all the same. It's all the same format for these pages, and these are the pages that are going to be linked down below in the description if you want to race any of these tracks for yourself. And obviously you can also click the logo for each track and get yourself some wonderful merches at the same time on store.profit.com. But yeah, I think without further ado, and with that boilerplate stuff out of the way, let's do one last showcase of the most up-to-date and final versions of my 5 main racing circuits, and I'll showcase them all to you one last time. This video is brought to you by Bruffy.com/support. Head to that link for all sorts of information on how you can support my channel, from links for direct support to referral codes, and even an article on things you can do to help your favourite creators. So we're going to start where I started back in 2014 with Los Santos GP. It was the first proper racetrack I made all the way back then, and one of my very first created jobs in the first place, and it is my most played track today with almost 160,000 plays on the PlayStation version. It's certainly the most popular, the most played, the most recognizable, at least from when it comes to my kind of stuff. The shorter inner loop variation that was the shorter variant of the older version of the track was Rockstar verified back in the day. That was a pretty cool moment. I don't think it's still in the game now, but yeah, the inner loop doesn't exist anymore because of the way that the props are these days for stuff like that. But yeah, it was kind of cool to be Rockstar verified, and I was always curious back then why they verified the shorter variant and not the full circuit, but it is what it is. That was a long time ago now. And the version now, actually this most up-to-date version of our LSGP, it maintains the same layout as that original 2014 version, but obviously back then we didn't have the prop count or props in general to make incredible bridges like we have right now. So the tunnel exit that we're going over with over the bridge here was always a interesting place on the original version of the track, which you can still access, by the way. You can still get the original 2014 version on the webpage that's linked down below in the description. But yeah, that was always an interesting moment because you had to avoid cars coming out of the tunnel as you were going past it. Back then I was still sort of in the mindset of GTA-ifying tracks in a way. There should be some chaos and carnage and stuff, but as we got more serious with our racing on GTA, we definitely had to seek out ways to avoid that kind of stuff. And I'm really happy with the way that the track is now. This was the first track to get a remake of my circuits, and the one that sort of, it was probably going to be the most difficult one to remake properly with the layout, the city nature of it. Obviously having a lot more props and lamppost removals has helped with the new gen versions, but it was a creator battle that we had that I did a live stream for, that you saw all the different variants and things that people made, and really great creations from all the people that were involved in that we've sort of brought together for this final version. And yeah, we're sort of left here with amazing grandstands, realistic catch fencing to separate different parts of the track, whilst also maintaining sight lines between different parts of the track, so you can see other people around. That's generally a feature of all my tracks, that you can see other people racing on different parts of the track. And it is also the shortest of my circuits, so it allows for being able to do a lot of laps. And when it comes to the random version, for example, you've got the shorter variants that are 1 car change per lap, and the full circuit is only 2 car changes per lap, such as the length of it. So yeah, it was my first ever proper race creation, in terms of trying to create a proper GP circuit experience. And I think now the version it finally lives up to that, with these amazing grandstands that you can see. And obviously things are blocked off, we've got no lampposts causing any issues, and they're all made to a very high standard by multiple people who've helped me over the years with that, and I can't thank them enough for their expertise from the creator community to get these tracks up to standard. And yeah, LSGP was the first, and it was the first one to be remade, so we've seen this version of it for quite a while now, but I had to start with this one, and we will be going in the order of the way that I created these tracks all the way back in 2014 and 2015 with this video. So while LSGP might be my most played, my second ever created track, which is also from early 2014, is probably my most popular and most well-known, most recognised, with the North Loop. We've gone from the shortest track of my 5 main circuits to the longest by far, and the newest version, this latest version, the final version of the North Loop, if you like, is probably, it's almost identical to the original version back in 2014, without the various apex propping of the previous stunt race version that we had. We had propping that split up the shared section entry and things like that. And back in the day, this was sort of back in 2018ish when we were creating that version, it kind of made sense to try and change it up a little bit, but the more we raced on it, the more it was kind of evident that the North Loop was so good just as it was. It didn't need any extra propping on corners and things like that. So apart from a few apexes on this track, most of the roads are just freely open in the same way that they were back in 2014. Obviously the benefit of that is that we have a lot more prop space to then put stuff around the track, and there's a lot of advertising signage you'll see as you drive around, and trying to make it very involved, and a built out pit lane that we've got sort of at the start finish straight that you'll see, grandstands and things like that. And what I've always loved about track creation, even when I used to do it, obviously I'm not involved as much in the creator as anymore, but when I used to do it, and what I've loved to, I've added my little bits of spice here and there on these tracks once they've been finished, if there's a few props left. It's about bringing some life to these circuits. Obviously this track was originally sort of inspired by the Nordschleife, and with that in mind, we've got sort of camper vans off the track, and small grandstands and other viewing areas dotted around the outskirts of the circuit, and you might not even see them as you're racing around. You might have to go looking for them a little bit. But just things like that bring some life to the circuit and make it feel more real, more lived in. There's still only a limit to what you can do with that. Rockstar have added quite a lot of things in that respect, where you can have spectators and other cars around and things like that, but model memory then becomes a problem if you use too much of that. So I have to obviously mention that Rockstar have improved the creator so much from back in the day. When I was first creating the North Loop in 2014, we had 50 props, none of the stunt stuff, and no lamppost removals, and all sorts of other little helpful settings that we have now that have been added. There's still a lot that could be added, and a lot of things that are in the dev creator that we don't have access to that would be helpful to use, but And obviously, like I said, model memory is often a problem. You can't just shove everything that you want in. There's still limitations, but I think being at 300 props now with all the options that we have and 100 fixture removals, it's in a good place, at least for the hardware that we have. I think maybe it would be pushing it a little bit too much if we started going too far, but yeah, thanks has to be given to Rockstar for continually working on the creator and updating it, because if it was still like it was when it first released back in 2013 and 2014, the tracks would be nowhere near as good as what they could be now. And yeah, certain settings that they've added, like disabling the boost at the start, as well as being able to disable catch up and slipstream, or being able to set people as ghosted if they drive backwards for the first 30 seconds of the race. Those are sort of recent implementations that they've added. Those are actually two suggestions that I provided back in 2014, so it's nice that they had a quick turnaround on those for about 12 years to get them actually in the game, but they're still there. And yeah, I think the North Loop shows a lot of that kind of small incremental updates that they've made to the creator, more so than anything else, because the roads are generally the same, but the track just feels a lot more alive and a lot more real and a lot closer to what you would expect to see in real life from a track like this. If you go around to the Nordschleife, you'd see people around the outside, you'd see advertising signs, all that kind of stuff. You see that now with the North Loop as well. So yeah, it's like I said, it's probably my most recognizable track. It's the one that a lot of people notice and know about. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to tracks in GTA, one of a lot of people's favorites. Certainly one of my favorites to race around. Maybe not my all-time favorite, I think, but yeah, it's always the sort of the ultimate challenge to get a good lap around here. And having the updated version of it now, as you're going to come into see here, built out grandstand, built out pit lane, feels alive. It's in the best place it's been ever, whilst also retaining some of that charm and challenge that it always originally had all the way back in 2014. So, on to Olympic GP, which was my third created track, and the last one actually to get a modern recreation. Just like with LSGP, we did a creator battle for this, so it does contain a bunch of ideas from some of the best creators out there, all brought together in one sort of super build, if you like. And with all the lamppost removal that's now possible, the Olympic GP layout is just awesome. There's a lot more space than there used to be. The original hospital section is back too, which I'm really happy about, after we had to sort of remove it from the previous stunt version due to prop space limitations. And yeah, it's just, I'm really happy with how this recreation has turned out. Olympic GP has always been one of my favourite ones to drive, but it has always felt somewhat claustrophobic because of the lack of ability to remove lampposts, so you had to have walls to cover them and things like that. Obviously you still have to have that in some places, but there's just a lot more space in general now if you compare it to the 2020 version, and even back to the 2014-2015 version where we were actually going through the gaps in the lampposts. It's so much better now. And again, you've got that same idea with LSGP, where sight lines to other areas of the track around the hairpins and catch fencing and all that kind of stuff. Obviously Olympic GP takes that to another level, really, if you like. This was born out of my testing track, Cutting Coroner's GP. You recognise the very start of the race is very similar to my testing track in that way, but this was created when I wanted a longer version of Cutting Coroner's GP for some more involved racing. We used Cutting Coroner's GP in Season 1 of the MCEC, but when it came to Season 2 I wanted a longer track, and I created this to sort of wind its way around itself on the various overpasses and bridges, such that you're sort of constantly seeing other cars at other parts of the track through these catch fencing areas, or driving over them or under them. As you can see here, we're driving over a different part of the track, and it's always had one of my favourite pit lanes as well. Just so involved. You'll see it, it goes completely on the inside of the track, and it's quite, I like long pit lanes where you're actually losing a decent amount of time, but you're also in the pit lane for a decent, you're actually having to spend a decent amount of time off the track, if you like. So yeah, I think Olympic GP is probably one of my favourites without realising it. Sort of subconsciously, it's just I'm really happy that we finally got a recreation made for it, because for a long time, like I said, this was the last one to get a recreation. And again, we got multiple people to help with that and give ideas, and we finally got the sort of nailed down the final build of it, which I'm really happy with the position that it's in now. But it was the last one. It was left until last. So all my other tracks, LSGP, North Loop, Blaine County, Ron, they'd all gotten the recreations done. They were all sorted. And Olympic GP's just taken a long time. So yeah, unless you saw it as part of the MCEC, this might be the first time you're seeing Olympic GP, the new version of it. And we're going to start using, obviously, the new version. We got the shorter versions. The West short version is a quite popular one that we've used in the past for random alls on Project Homecoming. But we can start doing random races around here now, and that's the plan, at least, to do some vanilla GTA randoms. The full circuit has 3 car changes per lap, I think, similar to Ron Raceway, and then obviously the 2 shorter variants, 1 car change per lap. And like I said, the links for all of these are down below. Like I said, you'll go to the web page that allows you to get all of these tracks, whatever platform you're on. So thanks to those who recreate the tracks as well and port them to different platforms. You can it doesn't matter whether you're on PC, PS5, Xbox, just whether you want to do the regular track, the shorter variants, the random races, even the older variants, you want to go back in time, they are all there and they're all available on all platforms. And that's something that I've always tried to make be a thing for my circuits. I want my circuits to be available everywhere, regardless of platform. And yeah, it's nice that sort of these final versions of the track, the sort of definitive versions, they're in the best shape they're ever going to be. They're not going to cause you any issues when it comes to racing. They're going to give you a pure racing perspective. They're at a super high level from a creation perspective, and that's not because of me. That's because of the people who have helped make it as part of the creator community. And it's nice that for one last time I've been able to showcase all these circuits, and they're available everywhere, and they will forever be available everywhere until Rockstar closed down GTA Online, I guess. But yeah, again, same with LSGP. We've got incredible grandstands around here. There's more of a limit of what you can do with city circuits, and this is a longer city track than what LSGP is, obviously. So there's kind of less you can pack in. But yeah, it's such a good layout. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the sort of winding around other cars as you're racing around. And yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into some random races around here, and also just revisit it as well for some proper racing, because I've missed it and we haven't done it for a while because it's been outdated, and it'll be nice to do some proper racing again around here. So Blaine County 24 Hours now, probably my personal favourite track. The recreation of this kind of just makes it even better. Obviously, again, you've got the shorter variants that we've always had from the very early days, and the sort of the shorter variant, the final shorter variant, is actually one of the faster paced ones, and it's still quite long on its own accord. But Blaine County tracks, I would say, don't need a lot to make them work. Similar in the way that they are to hill circuits. The tracks that are based in the hills, that based in Blaine County, they don't have a bunch of props that you need to get rid of, lampposts and things like that. They don't have a lot of prop work that you need to do in terms of blocking off walls and things like that. So I've always recommended Blaine County as a perfect starting place if you're interested in creating circuits, because there's not an awful lot that you can do wrong. You could ultimately place some checkpoints around Blaine County roads and get a fairly competent circuit, and then anything extra you can do just kind of adds to that. And that's what the recreation of Blaine County does. It's not really a recreation, it's more of an update, really, just making sure the apexes are sort of modern standards, the walls are up to modern standards. You're not going to sort of scrape along a wall and hit a bad hitbox, or the same with hit apex props and things like that. Just bringing the track up to modern and up to date creator standards, if you like. And I would say the final version of this track just refines what has always been a pretty nice driving experience anyway, even back when I first created it in sort of late 2014. This was obviously inspired by Circuit de la Sarthe, which is used for the Le Mans 24 Hours when I created it, and kind of alongside Olympic GP. You know, this came not long after Olympic GP, and I kind of developed them both at the same time. And this is to Olympic GP kind of what the North Loop was to LSGP, if you like, and this version kind of plays into the idea of it being a bit of a wilderness in some stretches of the long circuit. You know, while the back straight pit lane is quite built out, as you saw there, quite a lot of life to it. Again, I've put some little finishing touches there as well, with just little extras, fire extinguishers, tankers, camper vans, things like that, just to make it feel like people are actually around. There are other areas of the track that there's nothing, and there's very little in the way of props, advertising signs, things like that. And then as you get closer to the hub of the track around Sandy Shores, you start to see more life again. So around Grapeseed and sort of before you get to the pit lane, you don't really see too much. A little bit after the pit lane, you don't really see too much, and then you start to see a few more little signs, advertisements and stuff like that. You get more walls and advertising as we get into Sandy Shores, and this is kind of, you know, what you would consider the hub of the circuit, where you would expect people to be more frequently on a long circuit. They're all going to gather around where the start finish straight is and stuff like that. So yeah, you start to see more signage and more life as you get closer to the start finish straight, obviously culminating in the well built out start finish line with grandstands and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a feature of all my circuits at this point. All of the start finish lines and the grid areas are well built out. They've got the grandstands, they've got pit buildings, they've got all that kind of stuff, which makes them, again, add a bit of life to those parts of the circuits. So yeah, Blaine County 24 Hours, there's not an awful lot that you need to do with it in terms of the racing experience, but again, like I said, just bringing it up to modern standards and making it feel a little bit more alive. And I've tried to retain the sort of the colour theme of each circuit as well. Each circuit has always had its own specific colour theme, with red and white for LSGP, green and yellow for North Loop, black and yellow for Olympic GP, and obviously orange and white for Blaine County 24 Hours. And yeah, definitely one of my favourite ones to race around and drive, just because it's a nice pure experience. So finally, Ron Raceway. This was the last of the main full circuits that I made back in 2015, kind of as a standalone track when we were given the ability to make tracks in the airport, because that area was originally locked off, same as Zancudo. You know, North Loop and LSGP came very close together, Olympic GP and Blaine County came very close together, but Ron Raceway was kind of on its own and just delved back into it once the airport was made available. And probably more so than any of my other tracks, this is more so about the aesthetics. I think this track certainly divides opinion more so than any of the others from a driving standpoint, and it doesn't necessarily always produce the best racing at a higher level, but it absolutely plays into the theming the best of any of my tracks. You know, with the colours, the red, the orange and the blue, the advertising boards, the general buildings. It really feels like the Ron Fuel Company built their own track. And I've always been relatively decent around here as well, since it's more of a pure experience without much in the way of curb boosts or brake boosts. But the flip side of that is that it can be somewhat less interesting to drive with it being so flat. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts, but certainly this one plays into the theme better than any of my circuits. And when you look at the grandstands, the buildings, the colour scheme, I've never been one who's all form or all function. You know, I feel like there's an important mix of the two, and I think all of my tracks show that. You could just put all 300 props into making, you know, just purely on form and it looks great, but when you come to actually race it, you're hitting things and hitting bad apex props and all this kind of stuff that ruin the racing experience. And you can also go the other way as well, but I think there's a good balance to be had where I'm happy with the way that they are now. But Ron Raceway, because it's on the airport. There's not a lot needed in the way of propping to make a decent driving experience, because it's just all flat road anyway, and there's not an awful lot of lampposts that you need to, you know, cover over or anything like that. You can put more time and more props into the visuals and the aesthetics, and I think that's what Ron Raceway does the most. It really does feel like it is the Ron Fuel Company's track. So obviously we've got the shorter variations as well, which are somewhat popular, but I think the most popular of those would be the National Circuit, which has given us some great random races over the years. Obviously on Project Homecoming, but even more recently once we've got random races on regular GTA, and you can do those now. You know, you don't, it's not just 5M Project Homecoming as I crash in the pit lane, because of course it's not just, you know, Project Homecoming on 5M where you can do random races. You can do them on vanilla GTA now. You can live the experiences that you've seen on my random all videos, because a lot of the tracks that you've seen on those videos are now available for random races on vanilla GTA. Like I said, you just need to click the links in the description to go to the track pages, and the random versions are further down the page for each circuit, whatever takes your fancy. So if you want to, you know, do the national circuit of Ron Raceway and relive those 50-minute races that we've been doing over the years, you can do that now. So it's nice that the final versions of my tracks also allow for that, and there is random versions for all of these circuits, the full circuits with multiple car changes per lap, and then the shorter variants that where it makes sense at least. And I think, speaking of those shorter variations, one of the things I love about Ron Raceway specifically is it's the far-reaching sight lines. So you'll see cars in different areas of the track, as with most of my tracks, as I've been talking about, but you'll also see other parts of the track. So, like, because I keep all of the props from the full circuit in the shorter variants, if you're driving on the Indy circuit, say in the back part of the lap, you'll be able to see all the pit buildings and the grandstands from the full track in the distance, even though the shorter circuit never goes near them. And if you were to drive to where the main circuit goes, all of those pit buildings, grandstands and propping is still there. And I've always just thought that's a little bit of a cool feature to the shorter variants of my circuits. It just adds to the real track feel and the life to these circuits, that you can be racing the Indy circuit at the bottom part of the track, and even though the checkpoints only take you around there, if you drive all the way to where the national circuit is here, all of the props are still going to be here. So yeah, it kind of adds to that, because you know that's how it would be in real life as well. The track doesn't just suddenly disappear when you're only doing a shorter variation. So yeah, that is it. Those are all 5 of my circuits, my 5 main racing circuits that are obviously meant for proper racing, all done. The links for all of them are down below in the description. These are the final versions of them all. We're not going to see any updates after this, but I'm really happy with this position that they're all in. And like I said, you can race them whether you want the full circuits, whether you want the shorter variants, whether you want the random versions of the full circuit or the shorter variants, or the old versions. All the links for all of these 5 tracks are going to be down below, and you can check out the web page for each of them, add them to your game, whatever platform you're on, and just have fun with them. Enjoy racing around them, because that's what I made them for in the first place all those years ago, 12 years ago now. I made them because I wanted people to have some fun racing around them and do some proper racing, and now you can do some random racing too. And yeah, I think they're in the best place that they're ever going to be in. So enjoy them, and thank you guys very much for watching me with this one. And it's been fun to do sort of an old school track showcase again, like I used to do back in 2014 and 2015 when I was originally creating these circuits. Those will be at the very start of this playlist, but yeah, it was nice to finish it off one last time with one video covering the final versions of all of my 5 main tracks. So yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.